guys, my name is Ben and welcome to 10 rules for buying your first C3 Corvette. I'm sure you clicked on this video because you see the C3 Corvette and you've loved it for a long time. You've always wanted one, but what we want is for you to make a good purchase. We want you to buy a car and not get totally screwed over when you do.
Most Corvette buys are impulse buys, and because of that, it's easy to get hosed when you buy one of these cars. So,
be sure to watch this entire video. We're going to go through the 10 rules in buying these cars, and the point for this video is to save you time, money, but also to save you in frustration. It's always the worst feeling to know, hey, I paid way too much for a car that has a rusty Bondo frame or a car that is not worth restoring. So let's go ahead and get to rule number one.
rule number one is no matter how much money you spend on a car initially, no matter how expensive your C3 is,
when you buy it, you will eventually have to put more money into them. The newest one is from 1982, and they break. Stuff goes wrong, things get old. So remember that when you buy them.
the second part of rule number one is to always try as hard as you can to see a car in person before you buy it. In other words, don't buy sight unseen. I know there's some guys over in Europe and in the UK that's all they have, but make sure, if that's the situation you're in, that the seller gives you pictures of all the spots we're going to talk about today and all the issues that could potentially be there. You don't want to buy a C3, have it shipped all the way over, spend all this kind of money on it, and then find out it's a horrible, horrible purchase.
Rule number two. Now, rule number two is very simple. Buy the Corvette that speaks to you. I've talked to many Corvette enthusiasts that they love the Corvette that they have, but I'd sell it in a heartbeat in order to get that convertible, or I'd sell it in a heartbeat in order to get the one with the 4-speed. So make sure you do your homework on these cars and decide what you want. There's a couple of different options you can do. For example, you can get a chrome bumper Corvette, C3 Corvette, or you can get a rubber bumper C3 Corvette. Which one do you like better, the big back window or the small back window? Do you like big blocks? Do you like small blocks? Do you like 4-speeds? Do you like automatics? Decide which color you want. The best way to do that is to actually go out and drive multiple styles of car and figure out which one is the one you want. You don't want to go and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a Corvette that at the end of the day is not your dream Corvette. Rule number 3 is buy the Corvette that is within your mechanical ability to restore. So it's very simple. If you want a show car, buy a show car. If you want a driver, buy a driver. And if you want a project car, buy a project car. Now take a look at some of these pictures. Take a look at this picture. Now does that seem like something scary and I don't want to even think about something like that? Take a look at this picture. Does that picture look like something a little bit more doable? Now take a look at this picture. Decide early on what you believe you can tackle and what you're actually willing to learn when it comes to these Corvettes. Most of them are very, very simple, but do take some kind of learning and some kind of mechanical ability to work on. For rule number 4, you need to figure out what is your financial ability to put money into these Corvettes. As I mentioned before, these Corvettes, they do break and they do require money. So you need to decide what can you spare every month to put into the car. That way you won't get head over heels when it comes to restoring the car, and you'll be able to take it one step at a time. Next up is rule number 5. Rule number 5 is when you buy a Corvette, make sure it has a solid birdcage and a solid frame. The reason being is because they made thousands upon thousands of these cars, and it's really not worth your time to restore a car that has issues on both of those parts. The reason being is because it takes a lot of work and a lot of labor in order to fix these correctly. So this right here is a picture of a birdcage removed from a Corvette. As you can see, all the body panels on the entire car have to be removed in order to access the birdcage. It's a very time-extensive process, and you have to take the entire car apart in order to get to most of them. So, you don't want to do that. Now, the best way to find out if the car needs some birdcage work is there's 2 areas to look. The first is going to be underneath the kick panels inside the car. So step one to getting these kick panels off is you have to remove the screws that are on the sill plate. Once these screws are removed, the sill plate comes off, and then you can get access down here to the bird cage. Sometimes there's a screw up in the far inner corner, but once that screw is removed and the kick plate is off, this slides down out of the way and you can see the body mount right there. That body mount is the bottom corner of the bird cage. Another place you can look for birdcage rust is through your windshield. Where the dash pad ends and where the pillar post pads end, you can see the birdcage through the windshield. Now, if you look at mine, it actually looks fairly decent. Remember, these cars are older, so they're still going to need some love, but I've seen cars where there's holes right here, and that's where a lot of the main rust is. Most of the main rust actually happens right here, and you have to cut this panel off, take your windshield out, and then to access it there. Right, another thing you need to look for on a C3 Corvette is to look for a solid frame. In order to repair the frames, sometimes the bodies have to come off of the frame, and that's not something you want to do. So try to find a car that already has a solid frame. It'll save yourself a ton of time and a ton of work. Now, one of the main areas where these Corvettes rust is right here. This is called the rear kick-up. Now, your frame runs along your car here, and then kicks up here where the trailing arm goes in. It goes all the way up your wheel arch. So it's important to check all of that area very, very thoroughly for rust. That's a very common place where these cars are rust. Another place on the frame to look is right here where the frame goes in and then meets your front suspension. The reason being, you can be able to tell if your car has been in a serious wreck by looking for any kinds of dents or folds where the frame has actually been tweaked and moved to one end. Also, that's another favorite spot for rust to begin. So here are a couple pictures of what your frame should not look like in a Corvette. If you see this, don't buy it.
Rule number 6 is check the fiberglass body of your Corvette. It's very possible that in the 30 to 40 years these cars have been around, they've been wrecked multiple times. So you need to find out where they've been wrecked and if they've been fixed in the correct way. One test that you can do to quickly see if your Corvette has been repaired incorrectly is to run your fingers along the fender lips around all 4 wheels. Now, if it has been repaired poorly in the past, you'll feel unevenness, you'll feel gouges, scratches, maybe some Bondo bumps underneath there. It should just be smooth all the way around. Another thing you can do is check your wheel wells front and back. Most of the time when people try to repair these cars, they don't repair very well the inner fenders just because no one can really see it. Okay. Another thing that you can do is check the bottom edges of the front clip. Make sure none of that is cracked or broken. You can also check the insides of that as well to make sure that there's no Bondo repairs or crappy fiberglass repairs. Here on the front clip you can see this curve inside of here. Now if you check on the inside of that by looking through the front bumper right here, you can be able to see any kind of repairs. It's easy to get the outside looking good and cover it with paint. Almost no one ever pays attention to the inside, so check that. Make sure it's not horribly disfigured. I've seen cars that have pieces of metal in their bodies that it should not be like that. So rule number 7 is try to avoid cars that have been sitting outside for a long time, especially if you live in northern climate. The reason being because the number one enemy to these cars is weather. Okay, weather destroys. The sun destroys fiberglass. If it sits outside long enough, it starts losing all its resin, starts drying out and becoming hairy. And also you have water. Now when these cars get rained on, 99.9% of these C3s leak inside because they have the T-top roofs or a convertible top that has, gone the way of 40 years. So water will almost always get inside these cars if they're left outside. I've seen cars that have mold and moss growing inside them. They have so much water. Now when water gets inside one of these cars, it destroys any interior that you could possibly have used before. It destroys floor pans. If you have a car that's 76 or newer, it has metal floors, and so you have to go through the floor pans and get those redone if a lot of water has gotten into the car. It really just destroys everything on these cars. So when you're looking for these cars, unless you want a huge body up project, try to find one that has at least been kept inside. It looks like it's somewhat of decent shape. If, like I said, if it's 76 or newer, check the floors, make sure they're not rusty, because with the steel floors, once water gets in between the carpet and the metal, it just rusts and rusts and rusts and rusts, and it never stops. So check those. So rule number 8 is familiarize yourself with the C3 Corvette, especially with the year that you want to buy. Make sure you know the colors that came in, the different options, and also make sure you know what original looks like and what modified looks like. Take a look at this car here. Yeah, that used to be a Corvette. As you can tell, every single part of that Corvette has just been hacked and destroyed in some way. It's sad to say, but someone might have bought that car thinking they were getting a good deal, and you can tell it's absolutely horrible. So make sure you can tell between various years what the engine compartments are supposed to look like, what the interiors are supposed to look like. That way is more likely the chance that you get more of an original car. Rule number 9 is make sure you check the VIN of any Corvette you're looking to purchase. The reason being is because 1972 and newer, it actually tells you what body style and also what engine came in that car. You also want to make sure you match your VIN to the title of the car that you're going to buy. So if you look right here, here is where the VIN is located on every single C3 Corvette ever made. So make sure you match that up with your title. Also, you can check the rivets on here, make sure nothing's really been tampered with, nothing's been changed, but that's where they all are. Next, you need to check your data plate info, okay? It's also called a trim tag. If you look inside the car, right underneath the VIN, inside the driver's side door jamb, here is your data plate. Now what this plate is going to tell you is going to tell you the original exterior color, your original interior color, and also the date that your car was manufactured. And rule number 10 is when you have a car in your sights and you're thinking about purchasing it, before you do, go home and look through all the online catalogs from Eckler's, from Wilcox, from places like that, and kind of make a tally up on a piece of paper what you're going to need to do to fix the car and how much it's going to cost you. That way it'll give you a little bit of knowledge going into it of how much you're going to possibly spend and what those jobs are going to take. Now, another thing you can do is buy this book. This is a very good book. Can you see that? The Corvette C3 Buyer's Guide. It has a lot more detailed info on the per year changes that went through these cars. It'll help you figure out which car you want, and it'll also help you know what the cars are supposed to look like. Another book that will help you is this, the Restoration Guide. This book is more for people looking for numbers matching, factory correct, period correct kind of cars. This goes through every single year and says what all the numbers are supposed to be, what all the finishes are supposed to look like, that kind of thing. And then last is another motor books. It's the Weekend Projects for Your Classic Corvette. This doesn't have everything in it, but it does have good step-by-step guides to simple projects that you can do while getting your Corvette to the best it can be. So, last but not least, I just want to say use common sense when it comes to buying these Corvettes. If something doesn't feel right, if something doesn't look right, and you just have a bad feeling about it, don't buy it. It's not the last car that's ever going to pop up. There's always more Corvettes for sale. They made thousands and thousands of them. So make sure you buy the one you want. Make sure that you're happy with the car that you have. That way you'll never regret any money you put into it, and you'll never regret your purchase at all. Well, thank you for watching this video, and I hope that everybody who watches it has a great Corvette experience and gets the C3 Corvette that really speaks to them. So feel free to check out all the other videos on my channel. I have a whole bunch more videos on this car, things that I've been doing to it. Also, a couple 50s classics and other Corvettes that I've owned in the past. So check it out and tell me what you think.